Hey, how you doing? I am going to be drawing today a little kind of like Digimon inspired little creature with pinks and blues or cyans. Magenta and cyan. There's the colors I'm thinking of. Hopefully you can enjoy it as I'm going to be probably talking a little bit more of my past or give you a little idea who I am. Um I grew up in a small town called Doniphan. It's a little tiny town, you blink, you miss it, one of the many small towns scattered across Missouri. I was born and raised in this tiny town. Always joke and tease about this town so bad with rumors. You sneeze, the next thing you know, everyone thinks you have some chronic illness and you're going to die in the next few days. It spreads like wildfire there. Though I do miss the countryside, being able to, just get lost in the woods, see the wildlife there. Really took it for granted, but didn't know what I had then. It was the only one of the few positive things back then. Um, I lived over 15 miles from the nearest town, so even the town I'm talking about is still a little further away from me. Lived out in the country. But I did go to school in the town. Um, My grandfather owned a lot of the forest area. It ran along the nature reserve, so seeing wildlife from wolves. I don't think I've seen a mountain lion that has been rumored to be down in Missouri. They're still a very rare occurrence, but there's a lot of wildcats, coons, coyotes, plenty of predators out there. You could still get in a bit of a wreck, and so never had a. Well, I did have one incident, but I'll talk about that in another story, I'm sure. My family owned a sawmill farm slash business. Baling hay, selling cattle, and then the lumber mill being, talked about in a previous story. But owned a sawmill doing planing lumber, cutting down trees, the works. So from turning a tree to typical lumber you see at Home Depot. But it was one of the few last man-ran sawmills. The only mech part was the saw blade and the small little machine that ran it back and forth. But living in this little, in the middle of nowhere country, and knowing how toxic and dark this town was. Oh, it was me and my brother. I do have two brothers, but the youngest one didn't come in till, very, very later on in life when I was about 16. So it was mostly me and the other brother. His name will be Shorty. Pretty much how I knew him for the most time, even though it's not his real name. And I know Shorty in most places means like you're a girlfriend or you're a side chick or whatever the hell it means. Pardon my French. But it was me and him mostly. We had each other's backs. We usually roughhoused a lot. We usually had a lot of pent up aggression and anger. That what was supposed to be play fighting turned into like serious, like making each other throw up fights. Till we all tapped out and saying, uncle, or whatever you would say to, just call Ty on a break. I was born March 21st, 1987. I wish I knew my brother's birthdays. It was one of the many things I don't remember in a lot of detail growing up because they weren't really celebrated that much. My mom usually celebrated my brother's birthdays more because, my family lost custody of me when I was 1. And that's a fun story on its own accord. How that happened is my family my mom and my dad was pretty much thieves. My dad was known for steal guns and chainsaws, tools, really. Stole a vehicle or two. He actually stole a cop car. Went on a free hayride on that. So, their typical type of stealing is just basic shoplifting. And me being a newborn babe and carrying a car seat into a store, it was very easy to hide items underneath me, apparently. Well, they went Walmart to Walmart all over the state, and apparently the big Walmart somewhere in St. Louis had gotten pictures of them. So there was warrants out for their arrest. My dad apparently already had other warrants on him. Don't know if they're photograph related. I'm going on by what I remember growing up being told. But because my dad had so many warrants and a lot more bigger offenses out in his name, and he's already spent some time in jail, he had asked my mother and told her to play a pity story, how she's a starving mother and she was just stealing stuff to sell so she could buy groceries. Well, any logical person knows how far that will go. Don't fall over. Knows how far that will go. So when she went back to this Walmart, returning all the items, the police had took me away and sent her to jail. I don't remember whatever the bond and stuff was. I don't know those details. I just remember that. Remembering the story, I don't remember anything when I was that young, but was being told that my grandfather threw such an angry temper to get me back. But the problem is, he legally could not get me because he had statutory rape on his record. But my grandmother had a squeaky clean record, and technically they were not married, so she became my legal guardian. And my parents lost custody of me. So technically, my grandmother is my adopted mother. So yeah, that's an interesting start. So me and my brothers were raised in separate households, but I did not stop my mom being a chaotic habit in my life. Speaking of my parents, let's start from the top about my dad. Well, my parents we never grew up divorced. From the way it sounded, we lived in two households, but it's because, stupid shoplifting, lose custody of me, etc., etc. But they are legally separated now. Mom ended up deciding she didn't need my dad no more and went off with a new sugar daddy. But my dad, back in the past, was, I still feel he is to this day, very cowardly. Very, he has a very high opinion of a lot of things, tends to talk a lot of shit, and just loves, shit talking. He likes to have arguments for the sake of arguments. But any bite behind those growls, no. He was often gone from the house because how terrified he was of my mother, even though he was an angry man, but he couldn't stand her. Usually any arguments they had that ended up being somewhat violent, it was usually her striking him. And when he did get pushed to the brink of him striking her back, it was usually accidents that he ended up hitting her. Because usually he's throwing a piece of wood or something. In this one story I'm thinking of, he went to go throw a piece of wood that was so pissed because she was down, just arguing with him how he's useless and everything in between. He got so mad he threw this piece of wood and it ricocheted off the wall and popped her straight in the face. Me and my brother ran hiding because anytime this woman was in pain or angry, she took it out on everyone else. So we were terrified we were going to die because that was not a light tap on the head. It was straight up broke her nose. And of course my dad went straight into apologizing because, it's like a child accidentally hitting his sibling in the face scenario, started groveling. Try not to get sidetracked here too much. But my dad, he was very much a coward. When he wasn't working, he was always off in his games. Getting him to try to play with me and my brother, rather if it was like a Pokemon card game or, hey, can we play a game of Spyro, something with you, Dad? He was really not, wanting to engage with us. He knew we were there. He said he loved us. He was probably the only adult out of the pair that would say I love you. Actually, think of it. My grandmother did say I love you when I said it to her when I was younger. But really, he was the only family member that I recall that actually said I love you out of the adults. Because my grandparents don't really believe in public affection. That's just kind of the generation. My mom, she straight up actually didn't care for us. But anyhow, he often, when he was actually gone a lot, really. He was always off, A, either going fishing, or B, go play games with his friends. And he had like two different groups of friends. One group was a bunch of minors, and the other group was a bunch of older adults. The older adults is usually the ones you go off and play D&D with. The group of minors he only knew because one of the girl of there was about four of them in the group. Twin guys. One was dating the daughter of the friend from the other group. That's the only reason why he was hanging out with minors, which would label him into the creep factor because there's other underlining stories that were connected, and I have no way to prove them true besides what I was told, because the other female friend I got to know told me some other stories, so I don't know anymore. What else? Going on to my mother, I guess, since we already labeled my dad as a creep, a coward, anger issues, and was lacking of a parental figure. My mother, you kind of already got a scratch at the surface that she was batshit crazy. I don't even know where to start because she is such a trigger factor for me. Maybe I'll pick it up on the next one. Thank you for listening and have a good night. So sorry. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great day and make sure you subscribe. Bye.
Aw, love yous.